Movie Club Strikes Back, it's me Jenny, and this is another belated review, and I will be talking about Cube 2, Hypercube, which is the third film in a row which I've watched for Movie Club Strikes Back, which is part of a franchise which I have not watched any of the sequels or any of the films that come after it. I have not watched Cube 2, I went into this film completely blind other than the few comments that our chooser, Sam Basher, made. Sam Basher of SourceFed and For Human Peoples, and he made a couple of comments about this film, so that was kind of my main sounding board. And the only other thing I knew about it was that Cube 1 was a cult classic horror film in which someone gets cubed, and it's bloody and gross, and it was one of the key inspirations for the original Resident Evil film. So that's pretty much all I knew going into this film, that a lot of the stuff that was introduced in the first of this franchise was influenced into the first of the Resident Evil franchise, and what Sam Basher said, which is that it's a silly film with a very disappointing ending. And my quick review for this film is, it is a very stupid film that is trying desperately hard to be a clever film and failing. It's trying so hard. It's a low budget horror film. You can see that it's low budget, it has one set. The cast does an adequate job for the genre they're in. You know that it's going to be a silly, low budget, psychological horror, and yeah, the acting is adequate. The characters are very, very your classic psychological horror, psychological thriller tropes. There is the empathizable character that you're rooting for the entire time, who you may or may not should be trusting. There's the guy that you know you shouldn't trust. There's the little old lady with Alzheimer's, and as this is all about time, she's losing time, so it's a metaphor about losing time and losing track of where things are, and she's very much, at least in the very beginning, a self-aware narrator in a way, because she's breaking the fourth dimension, which is the fourth wall, and which is another reference to the fourth dimension, because she's referencing the audience. She's saying, oh, at this point in Act 1 the introduction should be happening, and she's saying lots of things which are breaking the fourth wall, which is going into another dimensional track. Is the fourth dimension the audience viewing the character, and they do a lot of stuff with that character that definitely feels like she is trying to be the voice of the audience. Which was okay, I guess. That's probably the most intelligent thing in this film. There's the blind girl who sees more than anyone else. There's the girl in the red dress, and we all know we shouldn't trust the girl in the red dress, especially given that all of the rest of the cast are wearing greys and blues which match the background, and she's meant to stand out, and you'd never really understand why, because this film tries to cram in a lot of really intelligent ideas but has no idea where it's going. It feels like Lost, and I only watched the first 2 seasons of Lost, but from what I hear about the rest of Lost, it feels like that. It feels like they are desperately trying to cram in a lot of really interesting theoretical concepts, and just failing to know what they're actually wanting to say, so it comes off very stupid and very incomplete. In terms of set design, as I said, it's low budget. You can tell that it's low budget. You can tell that they're using one set to the best they possibly can. The animation in this is probably one of the main things that makes this a stupid film, because the enemy, you can tell, is bad CGI, very obviously. I believe that the first one was a horror, it's psychological horror. There isn't really any good deaths in what would be traditionally called a good death in terms of horror films, because all of the deaths involve really shocking CGI crystals, or what looks like the old Windows inactive screen, where it looks like the balloon thing that turns into a square, that turns into a pointy thing, and that spins around and kills people. There's a lot of stuff that just, it's ruined by the CGI, and usually I don't mind bad CGI, but this is just one of those ones where I'm like, if the deaths were just that little bit better, it might have been slightly more entertaining, but it just wasn't. So that's basically where this film is. It's trying to be smart, it's just not getting to that point. The idea of third dimensions and time jumps and multiple universes, they all try and cram those concepts in without actually knowing which one they're choosing, or which one they're talking about, or how it works in this scenario. for me, my theory for how this universe works is because the fourth dimension is hypothetical. Yeah, the fourth dimension is hypothetical. So in this world, the only way that they can exist, the characters can coexist in a fourth dimensional environment, is through a psychological hive mind sort of thing. And that was mainly called up by the fact that in the first there's like this slow pan over during the credits, I believe, where all of the characters are like, they're on tables with cling film over them, and that desperately reminded me of The Attic, spoiler alert, from Dollhouse, and how that is a hive mind scenario where they're not actually physically in the environment, they're all psychologically in the environment, and they're all trapped psychologically within that environment, but they're not actually physically there. And I think that's how I feel about this particular film, that regardless of whether or not the fourth dimension actually gets breached, it's all a psychological thing. And again, the old lady says, no, it's not the old lady, it's the girl in the red dress. We all know we shouldn't trust the girl in the red dress because of fear and Resident Evil. Never trust the girl in the red dress in a psychological horror or any sort of horror film. But she says this could just be a dream, and that is how I'm going to choose to view this film, that it was all a dream, it was all a psychological hive mind incident where all of these characters were brought in order to experiment in the fourth dimension. It is not a physical reality, it is a psychological reality. And that's how I'm choosing to believe this film, because it ends with no explanation whatsoever, and the only character who was mildly empathetic being shot. Spoiler alert, because that's the kind of stupid film it is. So I've rambled on for way too long. I apologise for the lighting. I'm experimenting, so I'm probably like glowing white right now. I'm wearing pigtails because pigtails make me happy. And yeah, thank you for the pics, Sam. It was a stupidly entertaining film in a stupidly unentertaining film way where I regularly got bored. But there we go, I watched it and I've reviewed it, so tick. Feel free to comment and do all those things down below. I'm sorry I've rambled on for so long, I'm sorry for all the spoilers, and there we go. Bye guys.